He spoke to that directly yesterday, and the president put that in his statement that he gave to all of you, the news media, knowing you'd be asking following that conversation in the effort of transparency. Because he spoke to him directly yesterday.
And he expressed that
Haley,
to rather than later.
He spoke to that directly yesterday, and the president put that in his statement that he gave to all of you, the news media, knowing you'd be asking following that conversation in the effort of transparency. Haley.
Hey, thanks, Karoline. You made clear no U.S. boots on the ground. Is the president considering U.S. boots in the air as a form of a security guarantee?
Look, that was something the president mentioned on his interview this morning. It is an option and a possibility. I won't certainly rule out anything as far as military options that the president has at his disposal. I'll let him do that. I can tell you he's definitively ruled out boots on the ground. Sure.
Thanks, Caroline. Just about the possible venue for the talks, can you confirm that Putin suggested Moscow as a venue for the bilateral talks? And if so, doesn't that indicate that Putin is perhaps not serious about this, that he's suggesting a venue that there's no way that Zelensky is going to go to?
Look, I'm not going to litigate the private conversations between the president and President Putin, aside from what the president himself has already spoken on. But I can tell you there are many options that are being discussed by our national security team right now with both parties.
Can you give us an indication of where?
I just told you we'll provide you details as soon as we can. Thank you for trying, though. Livy.
Caroline, I wanted to ask about the National Guard troops. How is the White House coordinating with how they're being placed in D.C., what areas? And then also, how long should people here in the district anticipate the National Guard to be on the ground patrolling the streets?
I don't have a timeline for you, Libby, but we will keep you posted on that. I think the president, as you know, and this administration, he came to this briefing room with members of his cabinet to lay out the rationale and the reasoning for federalizing the National Guard here in Washington, D.C., and for our work with the Metropolitan Police Department to make our district safer. We've seen violent crime has taken the lives of far too many residents here in our nation's capital, and the president wants to make it safe again. And as for the coordination efforts, this interagency team is meeting and talking daily. In fact, there's a meeting taking place right now in the West Wing with members of the interagency task force to continue to discuss not just the National Guard deployment, but also how we can continue to remove public safety threats off of the streets of Washington, which, as the numbers I just showed you prove, they are doing every single night. I will just reiterate, 465 total arrests and counting since the start of this operation. I believe 11 or 12 days ago, I'll have to check the calendar, but those are pretty remarkable results. If not for this task force and their high level of coordination and the leadership of this president, there would have been 465 more violent criminals on the streets of this capital that you all live in every day. So I think we should all be very grateful for that. Stephen.
Thank you, Caroline. 3 questions about the D.C. crackdown.
Sure.
First, I was wondering if you could clarify something President Trump said. He mentioned getting rid of the slums where criminals live. Was he talking about tents or permanent residential buildings? And then the mayor has expressed an interest in clarifying how much of a focus illegal immigration enforcement is as part of this crackdown. Can you say anything about that?
Sure.
And third, any preview on the beautification?
3 questions. I'll try to answer all 3 of them pointedly for you. First, when it comes to what you said, and the president said, the slums of Washington, D.C., he's referring to the most dangerous communities, neighborhoods, and streets in this city where, unfortunately, violence has ravaged these communities and taken the lives of, again, far too many law-abiding D.C. residents. We know on July 5th of this year, just more than a month ago, a 3-year-old beautiful young girl was shot and killed in her car with her family in one of these communities, which is why there has been a surge, despite what many of you have been falsely reporting. And I believe it was the Washington Post who put out a map claiming it to be fact-based when it was just based on, I don't know, accounts that they've heard on the street, not actual statistics and data. So we went and reconfigured the numbers, and as I said, nearly half of all the non-illegal alien-related arrests have occurred in wards 7 and 8 in the District of Columbia, where we know, excuse me, there's the highest rate of crime. So we'll continue to do that. And what was your second question, Stephen?
Legal immigration, how much of a focus that is?
Yeah, look, I mean, the focus is to make D.C. safe and beautiful and to remove public safety threats and violent criminals from our streets.
Since the president often says that this war would not have started if he were in office, and
True.
And Putin confirmed that.
It's true. Do you accept that as true? The
Probably.
European leaders do.
Well,
And President Putin himself said that, by the way.
He did say that. The question I have, though, is what is the president going to do to ensure that these security guarantees last beyond him? into the time when he is no longer president? And does that have to involve Congress at all?
Well, he understands the need for that, which he spoke to yesterday. And what's he going to do? It's why he's engaging in so many talks and so many conversations with both sides of this war with our European allies. It's why on the way home from Anchorage, Alaska, very late at night, when I know many of you on the press plane were sleeping and many staff were sleeping, the president himself was still awake at 2 o'clock in the morning talking to European leaders and NATO about how we can ensure a lasting peace and bring this conflict to an end. He has expended an incredible amount of time, energy, and effort into bringing this war to an end, and he remains determined to do that.
Also, can
Go
I ask
ahead.
you about the
Go ahead.
Thank you, Karoline.
DC crime?
Sure, Jake, and then to your right.
All right. Thank you, Karoline. Which of the half dozen peace deals that the president's pulled off would you say he's the most proud of? And then I have another question.
That's a good question, Jake. I'll leave that to the president to answer. I think he's proud of all of the peace deals that he's been able to achieve. You saw the president of Armenia and the head of Azerbaijan both at the White House just a couple of weeks ago. The president, I know, very much enjoyed spending time with them and helping to bring that conflict to an end. He very much enjoyed his time with leaders of Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of the Congo in the Oval Office, talking to them about bringing that decades-long war to an end. India and Pakistan. He used trade in a very powerful way as leverage to bring that conflict to an end. So I know he's very proud of all of these achievements, and I know he's very honored to serve as the President of the United States and to restore peace around this world. Go ahead.
So you mentioned Armenia and Azerbaijan. That's a conflict that, I spent time in the Southern Caucasus covering that. And, a conflict of over 30 years, and he resolved it in just a couple of months. Are there other conflicts that the president's working on right now that are off the radar screen that we should be tracking?
In fact, there are many. The State Department is always working around the clock under the leadership of Secretary Rubio and keeping the president apprised of conflicts that are bubbling up all over the world. But of course, as you all know, as we've talked a lot about in this briefing, he's spending a lot of time right now on ending this war in Russia-Ukraine, and of course the conflict in Israel and Gaza, which he wants to see come to a close as well. Sure, go ahead.
So the president says that he's starting a movement to eliminate mail-in voting, but states administer elections, not federal authorities. So can you provide any more details about how the White House plans to eliminate that?
The White House continues to work on this, and when Congress comes back to Washington, I'm sure there will be many discussions with our friends on Capitol Hill and also our friends in state legislatures across the country to ensure that we're protecting the integrity of the vote for the American people. And I think Republicans generally, and the president generally, wants to make it easier for Americans to vote and harder for people to cheat in our elections. And it's quite mind-boggling that the Democrat Party could stand